I declare the council meeting open at 6 p.m. Good evening, councillors, staff, ladies and gentlemen. This meeting today is being held on Wajak Noongar Boodja, and I would like to acknowledge and pay my respects to elders past, present and future. I thank all past and present members of the community that have supported the city to better understand and value Noongar culture within the city of Wanneroo. I invite you to bow your head in prayer. Lord, we thank you for blessing our city, our community and our council. Guide us all in our decision-making to act fairly, without fear or favour, and with compassion, integrity, wisdom and honesty. May we show true leadership, be inclusive of all, and guide all of the city's people and many families to a prosperous future that all may share. We ask this in your name. Amen. Please note that the audio-visual proceedings of tonight's meeting will be live broadcast online, with the exception of matters discussed behind closed doors. The broadcast of the proceedings of the meeting can be accessed live and on demand through the City of Wanneroo YouTube channel. Item 1, attendances are as per the record. Item 2, apologies and leave of absence. We have a request to attend a meeting on the 12th of December electronically. In accordance with Regulation 14C2A3, a council member may attend a meeting by electronic means if the member is authorised either by the Mayor or Council. A request has been received from Councillor Smith to attend the ordinary council meeting to be held on Tuesday, the 12th of December 2023 by electronic means. The Mayor has referred the request to Council for consideration. The details of Councillor Smith's request have been circulated to all council members. The request includes information on reasons for the request, location from which the member intends to attend the meeting, equipment the member intends to use, internet connection reliability and confidentiality requirements. Council is now requested to now consider the request. Do I have a mover and seconder for this request? Moved Councillor Berry, seconded Councillor Huntley. Councillor Berry, would you like to speak to this item?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think this is an excellent test case, I guess, of the policy that we've all been trying to negotiate for a number of months. I think this will be a good way to see if this actually works or doesn't work, and I'm quite happy that Councillor Smith has provided enough details for us to make an informed decision, and I fully support her being able to attend. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Berry. Councillor Huntley, would you like to speak to this item?
No, not at the moment, Madam Mayor. I think it's all been said.
Thank you. Do I have any speakers against this item? Questions? Deputy Mayor Rowe.
Thank you, Mayor, and I appreciate that the request was circulated in advance. Can we just get confirmation from the administration that it complies with the Act, the regulations, so it's legally compliant? Can we get that confirmation from the admin?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Cope. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, look, if you... Regulation 14CA3 indicates that a member who attends a meeting under an authorisation under 14C, which the Mayor read out, by electronic means determined under Regulation 2, whether or not the member is physically in the state, is taken to attend and be present at the meeting for the purposes of the Act and these regulations, whilst the member is in contact by those electronic means, which each other member present at the meeting. Now, the guidance from the department is that the main thing Council needs to look at is the ability to effectively engage in deliberations and communications during the meeting.
Are there any further questions about this item? Yes, Councillor Miles.
Yeah, just 2 points. One, this is for the ordinary council meeting, not the briefing session. So I'm assuming Councillor Smith will be here for the briefing session. And 2, my other question is, we were told previously that the chamber wasn't set up for this sort of connection as yet. Are we all set up to do this for when it's required in December?
Ms Smart?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the question. I believe that we'll be able to facilitate electronic attendance for the council meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Miles, did you have a second question?
Only that, was Councillor Smith going to be here for the briefing session prior to the ordinary council meeting?
Councillor Smith, can you respond to that?
Yes, I will be. Thank you.
Councillor Wright?
Thank you, Mayor. I know the attachment that we've been provided obviously is confidential. I would like to move to go behind closed doors because I know there's a few of us that have some questions.
Do I have a seconder to go behind closed doors? Deputy Mayor Rowe, can we take that to a vote, please, councillors? And the motion to go behind closed doors has been 113 to 1. There's someone who hasn't voted. 14 to 1. Thank you. So we will now go behind closed doors to discuss this item. So if everyone could leave the chamber, that would be good. Thank you. Okay, council members, I asked you to cast your vote on this, and this item is that council authorises councillor. Can we have the recommendation back up again, please? It's not a. Oh, sorry. That council authorises Councillor Smith's request to attend the ordinary council meeting to be held on Tuesday, the 12th of December, by electronic means, in accordance with the details as signed in the request documentation submitted by Councillor Smith on the request form dated the 21st of November 2023. Councillors, cast your vote. Do you want to speak on the item, do you? Okay, do I have any speakers against? If I have no speakers against, councillors, cast your vote. Do you want to speak against it, do you, Councillor Nguyen? Councillor Nguyen, please speak.
And very sorry to take away some of your time because we've already spent an hour on this item. It's a joke, personally, because we've got far better things to do because we've got so many important items that we need to go through. Now, this item is a simple request by Councillor Smith to be able to participate as an elected member to represent her ward and to participate in a very important event in December. And that council meeting, we understand an item involving her ward, so that's the reason why she wants to be there. And to her credit, that while she...
Point of order, Mayor.
Yes, I've got the point of order as well. Councillor Wright, what's your point of order?
Councillor Nguyen indicated that he was offering to speak against the recommendation, but his statements are the opposite of his intention to speak against the recommendation.
Yes, I agree with that point of order. And the other thing, Councillor Nguyen, according to the Act, we are only elected by our wards, but once we swear in and swear our oath of office is to the whole district, not only to our ward. So Councillor Smith, wanting to participate in the ordinary council meeting, is representing the whole city of Wanneroo, not her ward, according to her oath of office. I just thought I'd remind you of that. Now, are you going to speak against this? Because if you're not speaking against it, we will go to the vote.
Now, I am against anyone gone. Sorry.
Councillor Nguyen, this is a serious chamber,
it is.
and this is a serious issue.
You gave me a look now.
Councillor Nguyen, this is a serious issue that our council has been working towards because we believe our representation of our council, of our city, is an important thing and shouldn't be a joke. And so that's why we've considered this very seriously. So please don't treat it as a joke, Councillor Nguyen.
And we have. I'm not treating it as a joke. I said, you know, we spent already an hour on a simple request, and I certainly don't want to take any more time because we should be facilitating a council member who wants to represent not only her ward.
Point of order.
Deputy Mayor.
This is raising the point of order for the second time. The comment just made was not speaking against the recommendation.
Yes, I agree. And Councillor Nguyen, you can no longer speak. I rule against it because you are speaking for it and yet you're supposed to be speaking against. Do I have any other councillors speaking against this recommendation? If there are no councillors to speak against this recommendation, please cast your vote. Will be able to attend electronically according to the... Councillor Smith, you will be able to attend electronically according to this vote. There were 3 against, which is Councillor Rowe, Councillor Herridge and Councillor Wright, and the rest of councillors supported. Okay, so we now go on to the next item, which is item 3, public question time. The following general rules apply to public question time and statement time. Public questions and statements should only relate to the business of the local government and should not be a personal statement or opinion. Only questions relating to matters affecting the local government will be considered at a council meeting, and only questions that relate to the purpose of the meeting will be considered at a special council meeting. Questions may be taken on notice and responded to after the meeting. Questions may not be directed at specific council members or a city employee. Questions are not to be framed in such a way as to reflect adversely on a particular council member or city employee. First priority will be given to persons who are asking questions relating to items on the current council meeting agenda, and second priority will be given to public statements. Only public statements regarding items on the council agenda under consideration will be heard. Each person seeking to ask questions or make a statement may address the council for a maximum of 3 minutes each. So we have Mr Graham Park here, and he would like to ask some questions on ASO 1. Is Mr Graham Park here? If you would like to come to the podium and give us your name and the suburb you live in. Thank you.
My name is Graham Park. I live in Timberland, suburb of Wanneroo. We have been highly disrupted by the flyover at Ocean Reef Road and Wanneroo Road, which works superbly. In that case, the traffic coming past our exits out of that suburb has been highly disruptive with the amount of traffic and the speed that it's doing up from the flyover. There is no break in traffic from Prindiville Drive in Wanneroo, where there's a set of traffic lights, to the traffic lights at the City of Wanneroo at the shopping centre. The traffic is 70 kilometre speed limit. My petition has asked it to drop it to 60 past the Jacaranda exit so we can get out at peak hour traffic. Or traffic lights put in, but for the immediate fix to lower the speed limit might give us some sort of chance to go to work. And the kids go out to school. When they're being picked up, the speed limit up that road is atrocious. So I've come tonight to find out what your decision is on that.
Thank you, Mr Park. Mr Nicholson, would you like to respond to that, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to say that the item is before Council tonight, and the recommendation is obviously to go to main roads and seek a review of the speed limit along that road.
Thank you. Do you have any other questions on that, Mr Park?
No, as long as it's being addressed.
Thank you. I've also had some questions from Ms Burzens for Stockland, Hesperia and QUBE. The first question is, and that's over PSO 11123, Review Local Planning Policy 5.3 East Wanneroo. Question 1, do Council feel confident that they understand the full implications of the policy in order to make an informed decision at today's meeting? Will Council consider deferring adoption of the policy until such time that further investigation into the implications of the increased road widths can be undertaken? The response from the Director of Planning and Sustainability is administration has considered the full implications of the policy and in particular the impact of wider road reserve widths. Comments on the above bullet points are provided below. Housing supply. Administration acknowledges that increased road reserves will reduce developable land. East Wanneroo will deliver approximately 50,000 homes, and this could be higher depending on residential density. It is noticed that the LSP submitted for Precinct 15 indicates a very wide range of dwelling densities throughout the precinct, with up to R80 proposed in some areas. The total number of dwellings achieved is therefore dependent on the density at which landowners choose to develop their land in accordance with the District Structure Plan and future local structure plan density ranges. Housing affordability. Administration does not agree with the statement that a reduction in development yields will drive up the cost per lot, reducing affordability. There are many variable factors that impact housing affordability. The development industry requires consistency and certainty in their planning and development. By Council clearly identifying its road reserve requirements and preferred tree species, this will provide that clear guidance. There are 28 precincts in East Wanneroo, with development occurring over many decades. The developers will factor in the city's road reserve requirements and lot yields when negotiating land acquisitions, and so this should not detrimentally impact housing affordability. Cost to Council. The maintenance responsibilities for verges for the majority of the city's residential estates lies with the adjoining homeowner. Notwithstanding, the city is responsible for higher order distributor roads, and this will continue to be the case. There is therefore not expected to be a significant increase in maintenance costs to the city. Pedestrian safety. There are 15 road types proposed for East Wanneroo. Of the 15, administration is proposing 7 of these have marginally wider road reserves. The increased widths are not significant but will enable more flexibility for planting, thereby creating more comfortable streetscapes. The increased separation of the path from vehicle traffic provides a buffer space which improves the experience of path users. With respect to pedestrian safety at crossing points, the traffic lane and cycle lane widths are broadly consistent with livable neighbourhoods, with only minor increases in width for some types of streets. Pedestrian crossings are designed to reduce the crossing width. Therefore, the width of parking bays are not considered and are located to ensure adequate crossing sight distance is achieved. Pedestrian crossing exposure times will not be impacted as road pavement widths are consistent with relevant guidelines and standards. Wider verges and islands will allow for road furniture and sufficient setback of paths, enabling greater amenity and pedestrian safety. The proposed road cross sections have been extensively developed with the city's traffic and transport team and landscape officers, and in the city's opinion will enhance the pedestrian safety and comfort. Heat island effect. The intent for the wider road reserves is to enable wider verges and median to make more space available for tree planting to enable unimpeded growth. More space for tree planting will act to moderate the impact of urban heat island effects to support the city's urban forest strategy. The intention for the future East Wanneroo urbanisation is to create a unique sense of place in a green environment, protecting as much of the existing vegetation as possible and high-quality streetscapes. If Council does not adopt the proposed approach in the policy, there is a risk that the same streetscape outcome will be achieved as in other residential estates in the city, where there is a lack of good quality vegetation and trees in the road reserve. Administration recommends that Council do not defer the report and adopt the policy as recommended. A policy is a guidance document, and there can be variance from this where justified. Its implementation can also be monitored to assess whether the intended outcomes are being achieved in practice. The second question is, the developer group's experience is that the main barrier to achieving street tree canopy cover is trees being removed by landowners or not surviving following the 2-year developer maintenance period. Is there an opportunity to investigate alternative mechanisms to increase tree canopy cover that don't include giving over extra land for road reserves, such as landscaping treatments and maintenance approaches and agreements? The response by the Director of Planning and Sustainability is, administration acknowledges that there needs to be a holistic approach to streetscape maintenance and management, including the consideration of residents removing verge trees and hard landscaping the area. Administration intends discussing this matter with Council next year. Notwithstanding, it is considered that the proposed road reserve widths will provide the best opportunity for street trees to be planted and thrive in East Wanneroo. Are there any other questions from the gallery? Any other questions? Okay. Item 4, confirmation of minutes. There are 3 council minutes to be considered tonight. It's OCO 1/11/23, the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on the 10th of October 2023. OC 02 1123, the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on the 15th of August 2023. And there is also amendment. I might leave the amendment. Is the amendment in the second item? Second item. Okay, I might move them separately because we've got an amendment in the middle. So can I have a mover and seconder for the first lot of items, lot of minutes, which is OCO 1 1123? Moved Councillor Herridge, seconded Councillor Berry. Are there any speakers against? Councillors, cast your vote. And that is passed unanimously. We now go to item OCO 2 1123, the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on the 15th of August. There has been an amendment to the minutes. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Wright moved. Seconder? Councillor Herridge. Are there any speakers against this? There are no speakers against this. Councillors, cast your vote. And the finals, and that was passed to help if I voted. That was passed unanimously. So we go to SCO 1 1123, minutes of the special council meeting held on the 6th of November. Do I have a mover and seconder? Deputy Mayor Rose, seconder. Councillor Huntley. Do I have any speakers against? If there are no speakers against, councillors, cast your vote. And that was passed unanimously again. Okay, we now go to item 5, announcements by myself without discussion. I would just like to recognise the service of Frank Civic, former council member and friend. Throughout his 22 years of service to the city, including a term as Deputy Mayor, Frank was a truly remarkable councillor. His local government experience, passion for his community and understanding of local issues was highly valued by the local people he represented and by his colleagues on council. Frank dedicated his efforts to many projects that have not only enhanced our city's infrastructure, but have significantly improved the well-being of our residents. His strategic thinking and responsiveness to the evolving needs of our growing city has seen infrastructure improvements to ease traffic congestion and enhance the connectivity of our city. Many vital transportation links are safer and more efficient thanks to his advocacy and efforts. He has helped usher in developments that have connected neighbourhoods and opened up new possibilities for economic growth and community development, such as the Yanchep Rail extension. His dedication to combating graffiti and preventing crime has helped create a safer and more secure environment for everyone and contributed to a sense of pride and security within our community. Frank's achievements have laid a foundation for continued growth and prosperity, and we are immensely grateful for his tireless service and dedication to the betterment of our community. Frank, we will miss your insights and vision, and we will all miss your dad jokes. On behalf of the City of Wanneroo and Council, I want to express our deepest appreciation for the transformative impact you've had on our community, and we wish you every happiness for your next venture, and I am confident we will continue to feel your influence within our city. Thank you. Thank you, Frank. I have another, I hope he's listening to this on YouTube, let me tell you. I hope he heard that. But anyway, I have another fantastic announcement. I'm pleased to share that Kelly Donker, Coordinator of Customer Relations Centre, and Sarah Straker, Service Quality Officer, recently attended the 2023 national, not just Western Australian, national AusContact Association Service Excellence Awards held in Sydney to celebrate the brightest talent in the contact centre industry. The city's Customer Relations Centre team were national finalists in the following categories after winning the WA State Excellence Awards in August. Centre Manager Kelly Donker and Employee Experience Initiative of the Year engagement and culture. I am also very excited to announce that City of Wanneroo were awarded the Employee Experience Initiative of the Year Engagement and Culture National Award. The initiative that was showcased was the Customer Relations Centre's Culture Refresh program. The judges advised that the City showcased a transformational organisational strategy that was people-centred and future-focused, setting the organisation up for success. The initiative formed part of a broader people-based strategy aimed at enhancing both the employee and the customer experience. A thank you to the City's acting CEO, Nolene Jennings, who supported the Customer Relations Centre team to deliver such an amazing program. It now gives me great pleasure to present the Employee Experience Initiative of the Year Engagement and Culture National, not state, National Award to Alex Evans, Manager, Customer and Information Services, and Kelly Donker, Coordinator, Customer Relations Centre. We have a photo op here. So if you want to stand in the middle, and you stand there, and we'll all have a hand on it, hey? We'll all have a hand on it. Congratulations. Thank you so much for you, and thank you so much too. It is, isn't it? As a city, we always punch above our weight and we do extremely well. And I'm really proud of the staff here, and I think we should be grateful for them. The next item is questions from council members. Do we have any questions on items on the agenda? Yes, Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mayor. One of my questions is in relation to one of the agenda items tonight. I did ask for an update at the last briefing session in regards to Hinkley Park. If this additional funding, which has been redistributed in one of the corporate and strategy performance reports, if that is passed by council tonight, when is the initial construction date of that project to start?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm not totally clear on that item, but construction on the civil works is underway and well advanced, and the landscaping works is going to start in the new year.
Thank you. Councillor Berry?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It relates to your previous item, item 5, where you've just done the acknowledgement, and rightly, to Councillor Savitten. Will there be a dinner for Councillor Savitten who's left and Councillor Singali who left during the year, please? Thank you.
That will be organised next year for all. That will be done, and it's a normal process that we do it in that fashion.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If there are no more questions, we go to item 7, petitions. We have a petition from Councillor Miles. Yes.
It was just a question. We received an update information with regard to from planning with regard to the Butler Drivers Licence Centre, and they're saying that they are going to change the in-out egress, but it stated, that memorandum stated that the DOT managers are not going to redirect the traffic onto the rear laneway onto Benenden. It was also a little confusing as part of that memo, and I'd like to understand it a bit further. If it's the managers of the building, it also says that DOT won't approve the toilets for that site. Can we just have a bit more clarity on what that memorandum we had in the RAP was about?
Mr Dixon.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, I think the response was provided by the Director of Assets, not myself. But I'm sure through the Director of Assets we will be able to seek further clarification in terms of the provision of toilets and request again from the Department of Transport that they seek to provide toilets on behalf of the local community.
Thank you, Mr Dixon. Okay, we now go to item 7, petitions. Councillor Parker, you have a petition.
I do, thank you. This is a petition to the local government to have a park installed at Kingsbridge Park on the northern side of the skate park. This area is rarely used and there is very little to offer from the unshaded grassed area near the skate park, where there is often teens and young adults being quite loud and using undesirable language. Our reason for proposing this location is twofold. It makes use of, I would imagine, the unused area, and has water easily plumbable to enable a water fountain in the enclosed area. Also, the increased number of residents and their dogs in the area of the skate park will reduce the antisocial behaviour that can occur. This area has established trees and bushes that it is important to incorporate into the enclosed area to provide shade for users, as well as being a local place of gathering for the community. It means more residents can bring their pets out for some exercise when visiting the park, for sports events at the nearby field. This will build community connection by introducing more people to one another with the mutual interest of pet ownership, as well as increased mental well-being for being outside and engaging with people. The petition was signed by 64 residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the petitions? Moved, Councillor Coetzee, seconded, Councillor Smith. Do I have any speakers against? If there are no speakers against, councillors, please cast your vote. And that was passed unanimously. So we have any declarations of interest by council members, including the nature and extent of which the interests are to be made at the commencement of the item to which the interest relates. Declarations of interest forms are to be completed and handed to the Chief Executive Officer. And we go to item 8, reports, planning and sustainability. Do I have a mover and a seconder for PSO 11123, review local planning policy 5.3 East Wanneroo?
Excuse me, Mayor.
Yes.
May I move a procedural motion that we deal with ASO 1 due to the one deputy in the audience today who has been waiting patiently.
Oh, okay. Do I have a seconder to move that to the Councillor Rowe? Councillors, cast your vote to move ASO 11123 to the beginning of the agenda. And that was passed unanimously. Do I have a mover and seconder? Moved, Councillor Wright, seconded, Councillor Miles. Councillor Wright, do you want to speak to this?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I thank the Deputy tonight also for his remarks around the comments, and I sincerely agree. It's a massive problem from Wingara all the way down to the Wanneroo town centre, and unfortunately is only going to get worse as more residential houses are going to the Sinagra estate, also East Wanneroo, and will continue to get busier over time. Although my personal view is I don't agree with reducing it down to 60. I do think we do need physical changes to the road layout to improve that connectivity and accessibility. However, I understand why that we do need to lower it to 60 because it is the only quickest mechanism that we have at our disposal. But I do understand that I'm hoping Main Roads does understand the residents' concerns from Prenderville Drive all the way to the Wanneroo Town Centre, that it's continuing to be a bottleneck for everyone, and especially at peak hour times from the Wanneroo City Centre is backing up traffic all the way to the showgrounds and even beyond that sometimes. So I do think it is a good mechanism to lower to 60 until we can get a more permanent solution from Main Roads. And I'm hoping that administration is continuing to do that advocacy with Main Roads around improving the physical layout of those roads. So I do commend the petition, and I do thank the residents for signing that petition and bringing that to Council's awareness as well. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Bedworth, do you have anything you want to mention tonight?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. With regard to this item AS011123, I just want to declare my disclose an interest that I have in it as being my ongoing employment with Main Roads. But as a consequence, there may be a perception that my impartiality on the matter may be affected. But I do declare that I will consider this matter on its merits and vote accordingly.
Thank you, Councillor Bedworth. Councillor Miles, would you like to speak to this item?
Yeah, just briefly, thank you, Mayor. Councillor Wright has pretty much placed everything on the record. I think, obviously, with the advent of the overpass being put in, the idea is to keep the traffic flowing, and I don't think anybody would not want the traffic lights back at Ocean Reef Road because of the actual mayhem that used to happen at that time. However, I think for sometimes the community, both in Pearsall, Hocking and in this location on the Wanneroo side as well, everybody has been asking for some time for some sort of intervention at East Road and or Scenic. And I think if something goes in there permanently, just to give the traffic a break point, that will help, obviously, the residents in Jacaranda Drive being able to exit, as well as those on Gungaroo and also Elliott. But I do think the first thing we should do is request Main Roads to do a traffic audit to be able to have the speed lowered slightly, to be able to at least help these residents get in and out without too much stress. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Do I have any speakers against this item? Councillor Huntley?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I'm absolutely opposed to any sort of downgrade on the speed on this road. It is absolutely going to do nothing. It will cause the traffic to bulk together and create even more of a problem with no space between the vehicles for these cars to exit. The only way to correct this all the way through to Wanneroo Main Town Centre, there is no break in the traffic whatsoever. None of these cars can get out. The right turns are almost impossible to make during peak hours. There has to be a system that a traffic light is put in, literally a 30-second delay. And remember that Ocean Reef, when the flyover went in, that was 2 major roads crossing. This now is only a T-junction, so it only needs to be withheld. Traffic needs to just be slowed down for 30 seconds to create enough break, and then traffic will pass through quite easily. It is a simple fix, but reducing the speed limit will not correct this. It will cause even more problems. It will bulk the traffic together, and there will be no gaps. It will be absolutely a waste of time doing and putting this in place, other than the fact that people will get more speeding fines. So I am opposed to this, and I hope my fellow councillors will really consider what they're thinking about reducing the speed down to 60.
Do I have any speakers for this item? Are you speaking for this item, Councillor Berry? Yes, Councillor Berry.
How much of this is already 60 kilometres that's highlighted in red? Is any of it already 60, or is it before the 60 or after the 60? Because some of it is already 60, is it not?
Mr Nicholson?
I'd have to take that on notice, Mayor.
I think it goes to 60 just before Elliott Road. I drive that every day. So a part of it is already down to 60 going through the town centre. Do I have any speakers for the item?
Actually, Mayor.
Councillor Wright?
I may, just out of caution, do a declaration of impartiality. As I know, I have lodged a formal petition with the WA Parliament in regards to East Road intersection, and I know that will have a flow-on effect for this item, so I will just do that out of caution. So with regard to item ASO 1-1123, response to petition, request for speed limit reduction or installation of traffic lights at Jacaranda Drive / Wanneroo Road intersection, I disclose that I have been the main petitioner for the East Road intersection upgrade, and as a consequence there may be a perception that my impartiality on the matter may be affected. I declare that I will consider this matter and vote on its merits and vote accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Do I have any speakers for this item? Councillor Nguyen?
This is a recommendation to put forward our recommendation to Main Road to make decision, and this road, part of the Wanneroo Road, is the responsibility of Main Road. It's not our responsibility. So when our residents have a concern, as signed by our 60 residents living in this area, they use this road quite regularly, even though it may not meet the main road requirements. I think it's our responsibility just to put up the residents' concern and leave it to Main Roads to consider and make the decision, and that's our role.
Thank you, Councillor Nguyen. Do I have any speakers against? Councillor Berry.
It's not a speak against, it's another question. Where it is already 60 kilometres, a bit further up, do we know if this has had an impact and assist the traffic to join Wanneroo Road, or have they got equal problems to the people that are in the 70 kilometre area? Has there been any study done so we know? Thank you.
Mr Nicholson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I can advise that this is not my area of speciality. I'm standing for Mr. Singh tonight, and I would take it on notice and provide a response once I've spoken to our traffic engineers.
Do we have any speakers against this item? We've got no speakers against this item. Councillor Wright, would you like the right of reply?
Thank you, Mayor. Just in regards to this item, I understand my fellow ward councillors' concerns in regards to the speed limit. I do also share them. However, I understand that this is the only mechanism that will potentially address the petitioner's problem that is specifically stated within the petition. However, I do think the broader implications is definitely physical layout modifications that are definitely needed. I know Elliott Road, the city has already got an upgrade underway in the next couple of financial years. East Road, we don't know what's happening with that. We've got the duplication of Lenore Road. So there's projects that are underway, but there are definitely those gaps like Gungaroo and East Road, Jacaranda Drive that still haven't been addressed. So I do hope that Main Roads and also our state members of parliament are also listening tonight at the concerns that residents are expressing in regards to this strip, and hopefully we can get some physical modifications to that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillors, could you please cast your vote? And the recommendation has been passed with Councillor Berry and Councillor Huntley voting against the recommendation. And we will now go back to the agenda proper. We go to item PSO 1-1123. Do I have a review local planning policy 5.3 East Wanneroo? Do I have a mover and seconder for this item? Moved Councillor Bedworth, second Deputy Mayor Rowe. Would you like to speak to this item, Councillor Bedworth? Yes, do your declaration.
Yeah, I have to make a declaration with an impartiality. With regard to item PSO 1-1123, review of local planning policy, I disclose that I am a resident of Precinct 6, and as a consequence there may be a perception that my impartiality on the matter may be affected. I do declare that I will consider this matter on its merits and vote accordingly.
Thank you, Councillor Huntley. Councillor Bedworth, would you like to speak to this item?
Thank you, Mayor. No, I've got nothing to say this time, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Rowe, would you like to speak to this item?
Thank you, Mayor. Briefly, just to encourage councillors to consider and read the detailed comprehensive report and the way in which the Director has addressed some of the items and concerns that were put forth in the public statements that were read aloud earlier. And I think with all of that in mind, I have total comfort seconding this item.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Rowe. Do I have a speaker against this item? Councillor Miles?
I do, but I do have a question first. Thank you, Mayor. And it does go to an answer that the Director gave to the planner for Stockland, Hesperia and Cube, which you read out earlier. And on the page 3, under that second question. I'm just a bit concerned that in answer to that question, administration is acknowledging a need to approach the streetscape maintenance and management, but we're not going to have a discussion about that until next year. So I'm just wondering from administration, why would we have not had that discussion, because it's obviously going to impact our operational costs, why would we have not had that discussion prior to actually approving this item tonight?
Mr Dixon.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, I think that the question is in relation to the removal of trees by landowners, and the response was provided within that context. So that's a broader issue than just East Wanneroo. It's an issue around how council would like to consider compliance with removal of street trees by residents, but also how council wants to deal with streetscapes more broadly within the city of Wanneroo, not just within the context of East Wanneroo, and that's the context within which the response was provided.
Thank you, Mr Dixon. Do we have any speakers against this item? Councillor Miles.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and I think I did ask many questions last week about my concerns on a couple of items within the report. Also, before it went out to consultation, I also indicated my concerns in regard to some of the proposed road widths within the area. We're talking about some of those roads being wider than Wanneroo Road. I think some of those reserve roads are just too wide. I do note in this updated question that was asked by the planner concerned, they also touched on something that I'd asked last week to Mr Van Heineken with regard to if we're having wider verges and wider paths and wider roads, are we actually going against the heat island effect, which we're trying to combat in another part of our agency, being Parks and Gardens. I do also want to look at the operational costs with regard to how we're going to keep those streetscapes. We obviously had a good discussion about some proposals last night with our general operational costs. And I know this is still some time away, but I think we need to start understanding from when we do these policies, bearing in mind this is probably a 10-year policy, we need to understand the cost in the implementation of some of these policies. So whilst I think in that second question on page 3, it talks about developers get very frustrated that they put a nice tree in. By the time the builders come in, that tree is often broken, demolished, or just thrown into the skip bin that's been provided. And you know, maybe we need to come up with a different plan where council actually puts in a tree once the owner of the property orders their bins. Our parks people can go and deliver, and then obviously charge that out to the developer or have some sort of reserve specifically for that. But as it is, I'm not comfortable with the policy. I said that for the last 3 meetings that we've had it, and that's one of the reasons, or a couple of the reasons, that I am voting against it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Any speakers for the item? Councillor Huntley.
Question, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to ask a question. If we are going to have these wider verges, then the developers look after these verges for 24 months. 24 months will not be enough to actually ensure that the trees and the undergrowth have sufficient water to survive. My real concern is that we are going to have these wider verges and we're just going to be looking at sandpits with skinny trees desperately trying to grow in 60 degrees of heat. How are we going to sustain these trees after the developer has handed them over?
Thank you, Councillor Huntley. Mr Dixon.
Through you, Mayor, the list of street trees that's included within the policy has been prepared very carefully through qualified landscape architects, horticulturalists and arborists. They're specifically chosen for the context of East Wanneroo, They're also specifically chosen because of their water tolerance, knowing that they will be established for 2 years with water, but then need to thrive and survive thereafter. And that's the intent behind why those particular trees have been chosen, not choosing trees that are water intensive and won't thrive after a 2-year period of establishment.
Thank you, Mr Dixon. That was a question. Do you want to speak against the item?
No, follow-on question, Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Huntley.
So have we got a backup plan if the trees die?
Mr Dixon.
So, Mayor, I'm confident, given the extent of information that's been provided and research, that there won't be a need if they're planted appropriately and they're watered for that maintenance period. There shouldn't be many instances of trees failing within that context. However, if there are failures before the trees are handed over, the streetscape's handed over, the requirement is for the developer to plant replacement trees.
Thank you, Mr Dixon.
Can
do
I
you
ask
have
another
question?
Yeah, another
do you,
question.
Councillor Huntley?
So the developers are obviously going to plant trees as per our requirement. They plant those trees and they water them. Now, they will mass water them to make sure that obviously they thrive, and then we come and switch the water off. Can you tell me how have we got a standard of how old the tree will be before it goes in so that it has a really good chance of survival, or will it just be a sapling?
Mr Dixon.
Mayor, these are very operational questions. Typically, the smaller the plant that's planted, and I've got this on reliance from our assets colleagues, that the smaller the plant, the greater the chance for it will thrive over time. But I think the key issue, as I mentioned, is that the watering regime will be undertaken. So the approach that we take with watering is that it's watered for a period of time, but it's gradually weaned off from water to just before the asset is handed over to the city. So it already starts to develop that tolerance. It isn't that there's a huge amount of water that's provided and then it's switched off and there's nothing. There is a period of leading where there's a reduction in water to ensure that the tree is able to survive. I can provide further information on the context of that, but it is a very detailed operational question.
Mr Dixon. Councillor Wright, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just in regards to following on from Councillor Miles and Councillor Huntley's questions, have we got any KPIs or any tracking mechanisms in terms of how the city monitors those tree growths and obviously how much eventually deceases, you know, and what the implications of that is in meeting our canopy cover?
Councillor Wright, this is actually operational. We've had lots of data brought to us by Mr Chettleberg over the years about that. So, Mr Dixon, if you respond to that, can you just keep it very high level, please? Because there is a lot of data we can get for you offline from Mr Chettleberg about that. Thank you.
So during the typical two-year maintenance period, often that period is extended, but during that period we monitor the growth and the number of trees that don't survive, and their expectation is that the developer will provide replacements if there are a need for replacements. But it's not that we let them do nothing for 2 years and then suddenly the asset is ours. There's a handover and there's a lot of monitoring and meetings that take place during that 2-year period to ensure that things are moving in the right direction and the trees are surviving.
Thank you, Mr Dixon. Councillor Huntley, is this a question or is this a speaking
Yeah,
against?
another question, Madam Mayor.
Okay, Councillor Huntley.
So if we look at the main thoroughfare of Wanneroo, Wanneroo Road, we can actually see a wide verge and plenty of trees that are actually doing really well, but the undergrowth does not match the pictures that you've put in this policy. You've actually shown really good undergrowth, and yet we have not been able to achieve that on the Wanneroo Road. How can you guarantee that these wide verges are going to be green like the photos you've produced?
Mr Dixon.
So through you, Mayor, there's a number of different examples. So obviously the city, different contexts, different streets, different environments. I think the intent is to provide green. I mean, there's so many different variables within that I could answer that question with, but the intent is to provide tree canopy avenues along all of the major trees within the area. The question of understory and planting at the lower ground level is something that isn't covered through the policy. The policy talks about street trees. It doesn't cover the detail of what planting is provided underneath. And that's the reason for that is because it's a very detailed operational matter. And that will be worked through with the developers when they prepare their landscaping and streetscape plans, but also very much in liaison with our assets team to ensure that whatever is chosen by the developer, we're able to maintain and it's fit for purpose.
Thank you, Mr Dixon. Do you have another question, Councillor Huntley?
I do, Madam Mayor. So my final question is to you. The real concern is that we have these wide verges. We land up losing the undergrowth, the undercover, because it dies back, and then ultimately we mulch through, or we turn it into a sandpit. As soon as it rains, the mulch runs off. How are we going to prevent us creating that issue in these wider verges? What are we putting in place to the developers, and what will we do afterwards? Because it's going to be after. The developers aren't going to have the issue. We're going to have the issue later. What are we going to put in place to prevent this?
Mr Dixon.
Through you, Mayor, that's again a very detailed operation beyond the scope of the policy that we've set out. The policy sets out a high-level approach to tree planting. It doesn't set out the planting for the understory of the trees. That's a detailed matter that's addressed through subdivision conditions and clearance of subdivision conditions. We work through that, the specifications and guidelines that our assets team have in addition to our land development team. Mayor, I'd be happy to spend more time with Councillor Huntley going through the detail of that very matter, which is I see as an operational issue.
Yes. Do I have anyone speaking against this item? Is this another question?
Just one.
Is it operational?
I wouldn't have said so.
Okay, Councillor Berry.
We've just heard that some of the trees might die and then they're replaced by the developer. Is the developer responsible per individual tree for 2 years of watering, or is it replaced at, I don't know, 23 months, it's handed us to a month later and it's our problem? Just wondered.
Mr Dixon.
So first of all, I'd like to respond by saying the intent is that we choose species which will thrive in the area, so I'm not expecting a significant number of trees that fail. If there are trees that fail during the maintenance period, the expectation is they will be replaced. If there's a large, it's unreasonable for a developer, if one tree fails, that they have to continue to maintain a stretch of several kilometres of road for a longer period. But however, if there are large-scale failures, which I don't anticipate, then it would be a reasonable expectation that we don't accept the handover of those assets until the trees are properly established within the road reserve.
Thank you, Mr Dixon. Do we have any speakers against this item? If we have no further speakers against this item, Councillor Bedworth, would you like the right of reply?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, councillors, cast your vote. And I declare that PSO 11123 is passed with 2 councillors voting against, which is Councillor Huntley and Councillor Miles. We now go on to PS 021123, consideration of amendment number 204 to District Planning Scheme number 2 following advertising, the resolution of scheme anomalies affecting land in the East Wanneroo Cell 3, agreed structure plan number 5. Do I have a mover for this? Councillor Miles, seconder Councillor Wright. Councillor Miles, would you like to speak to this item?
Yeah, just briefly, Mayor. I mean, this is part of, as it says, to fix up the anomalies and obviously start to work towards. To my understanding, is to work towards removing the DCPs eventually out of these areas. This is something that the council needs to do, especially with East Wanneroo coming on board. So running these abnormalities and affected land in certain areas, I totally support, and it also gets rid of another headache away from our planning scheme. Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Wright, would you like to speak to this item?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Do I have any speakers against this item? If there are no speakers against this item, councillors, please cast your vote. And I declare it passed unanimously. We now go to item PSO 31123, consideration of amendment number 207 to District Planning Scheme number 2 following advertising, normalisation of the Hainsworth Local Structure Plan number 98 area. Do I have a mover and seconder for this item? Mover, Deputy Mayor Rowe. Seconder? Councillor Berry. Deputy Mayor Rowe, would you like to speak to this?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'm sure Mr Dixon is glad that this is probably the most straightforward item on his planning agenda tonight. And boy, what a good item is it. It's essentially marking the successful completion of a residential development estate in Girraween. That's great. What it means is that the changes to the residential coding that occurred several years ago have led to the changes to demography, population growth and the development of an estate in an affordable manner in the great suburb of the south in Girraween. It is important because I think sometimes, not just in this council but across the area, we see large-scale development with our friends in the north. We see the creation of a new city, essentially with East Wanneroo, which is obviously commanding much of this council's planning energy. But it does not mean that there is no development occurring in the south. In fact, what we're seeing is small pocket developments that are changing the nature of the local area down there. So I think first and foremost we should credit the council officers who were involved in this process over the previous years, and also Development WA that came in as the main development agency to try and get this project up and running. And what we see before us now is the completion of that project, the need to normalise this structure plan, and now residents very happily living in the suburb of Girraween. So I commend this report to Council.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Rowe. Councillor Berry, would you like to speak to this item?
I don't think I need to add anything to what Deputy Mayor Rowe has just said. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Do I have any speakers against this item? Councillor Nguyen, you have a question. Go ahead.
Do we know why there were still the remaining, I think, 10 or so lots that haven't been developed? Do you know what the reason for that?
Mr Dixon.
Through you, Mayor, no, I don't. I would imagine that the likelihood is some of those lots will be developed very shortly.
Thank you, Mr Dixon. Do I have anyone speaking against this item? If there's no one speaking against this item, councillors, please cast your vote. And I declare that item passed unanimously. We now go to item ASO 21123, Nangara Road upgrade from Hartman Drive to Mirrabooka Avenue, Wangara, community engagement results and land requirements. Do I have a mover and seconder for this item? Moved Councillor Herridge, seconded Councillor Figg. Councillor Herridge, would you like to speak to this item?
No, thank you, Mayor. I think the report speaks for itself.
Councillor Figg, would you like to speak to this item?
No, thank you, Mayor. I agree with Councillor Herridge.
Are there any speakers against this item? If there are no speakers against this item, councillors, please cast your vote. And that item was passed unanimously. We now go to ASO 31123, pedestrian accessway closure between Blackmore Avenue and Innes Place, Girraween, community consultation outcomes. Do we have a mover, Deputy Mayor Rowe? Do we have a seconder, Councillor Rahman. Deputy Mayor Rowe, would you like to... Councillor Steve, sorry. Deputy Mayor Rowe, would you like to speak to this?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I covered most of the points in the context when this item last come before Council, so I just wanted to stress a few of the reasons why I think Council should support the recommendation that is in our agenda. I know some of the submissions talked about our active transport plan and how we support, advocate and promote pedestrian access. It is important, I certainly acknowledge that, hence why it's also important to acknowledge that pedestrian access would not be significantly disrupted. There is access currently through Blackmore Park. While there is no footpath that would connect through to Blackmore Avenue, there is also the footpath through Templeton Crescent that connects to the transport networks of the bus, but also to New Park Shopping Centre, which I think addresses those remarks that were made throughout the submissions. I think it's also important to note, and it's a broader strategic point that I made last time, established suburbs generally have a legacy of drainage sumps and pedestrian access ways. Now that leads to more maintenance requirements for them, but in the event that a pedestrian access way or a drainage sump is presenting significant challenges for the local community, I do think we need to have broader discussions around how we approach that rather than having to deal with these matters on an ad hoc manner. The last thing I wanted to do was acknowledge the work and the patience and persistence of the local residents. They're not here tonight due to work commitments, but they were very diligent in presenting their petition, coming to council. I think everyone remembers the deputations they delivered in a very respectful manner. So I want to acknowledge on the record Ms Laurel Gregory, who was the lead petitioner, as well as Josephine, Colin, Joel, Rob and Elise. And I hope that Council will support this recommendation, noting that the Planning Commission will be the main deciding body on this matter.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Rowe. Councillor Seif, did you want to speak to this item?
No, I think Councillor Rowe covered everything.
Does anyone want to speak against this item? If there are no speakers against this item, councillors, cast your vote. And this item has been passed unanimously. We now go to Infrastructure Capital Works, ASO 41123, tender 23150, upgrade of Hester Avenue and Connolly Drive roundabout. Please note there is a confidential attachment. If there's any discussion required for the confidential attachment, then all recording must be ceased. Members of the public exit the chambers and the chambers doors must be closed. We have to go behind closed doors. Do I have a mover for this item? Councillor Bedworth, and a seconder, Councillor Parker. Councillor Bedworth, do you want to speak to this item?
Thank you, Mayor. For any of us who have had anything to do with the Black Spot funding programme will understand that it's not an easy process to undertake in order to gain funding for road improvements and treatments. So my thanks to the City for preparing this and getting to the tender stage. By virtue of it being subject to a Black Spot funding programme indicates that this area does in fact have a high rate of crashes for it to qualify. So the note of improved roundabout geometry and the rest of the works undertaken or going to be undertaken is of great relief to myself because I live locally and I've seen some of these near misses and some of these crashes. So furthermore, since the seeding of this section of road from main roads to the city, the actual need for the current layout and geometry of the road in that manner is no longer necessary, given the volumes of vehicles that are now going further north on the extension of the freeway. So briefly, I'll just like to say to my councillor colleagues here that I urge you to vote in favour of this, given that the improvements that are suggested and the volumes and traffic movement improvements that will occur in that area, and more importantly, the road safety measures that will come with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bedworth. Councillor Parker, would you like to speak to this item?
Very briefly, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Bedworth, for your input. Very happy to support this item. This intersection has been a nightmare and incredibly dangerous, and I look forward to the upgrade. The intersection is actually right on the Rafa Retirement Village, and the poor oldies in there have had absolute horrendous. They've had to time when they go out in the morning, when they come back in the afternoon. It's been absolutely horrendous. It's probably one of the most dangerous intersections, unfortunately, that the whole area has had to live with for, couple of years now? So really looking forward to this being fixed up and safe for the whole area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. Do I have any speakers against this item? Councillor Berry?
I'm not speaking against, I've just got a question. Do we know how many accidents have taken place since the freeway opened going north? I appreciate there was many accidents before, but is the accident volume the same right now? Thank you.
Mr Nicholson.
Through yourself, Madam Mayor, obviously this item deals with the award of a tender, so I'll have to obviously get back to the councillors in terms of that statistic.
Thank you, Mr Nicholson. Do I have any speakers against this item? If there are no speakers against this item, councillors, please cast your vote. And that item was passed unanimously. We now go to ASO 51123, Local Roads and Community Infrastructure Program Phase 4. Do I have a mover and seconder for this item? Councillor Wright moves. Deputy Mayor Rowe seconds. Councillor Wright, would you like to speak to this?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Deputy Mayor Rowe, would you like to speak to this?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Do I have any speakers against this item? If there are no speakers against this item, councillors, please cast your vote. That item has been passed unanimously. We now go to ASO 61123, the tender 23025 for the Riverlinks Park Clarkson new All Abilities Playground. Do I have a mover and a seconder for this? Okay, moved Councillor Parker, seconded Councillor Smith. Councillor Parker, would you like to speak to this item?
Thank you, Mayor. Absolutely thrilled to see this project coming to fruition. The inclusion of the children with disabilities playground to a park where families run, walk dogs and enjoy the quality family time is amazing, and the local families cannot wait to see it completed. This park is always chock-a-block full of families, chock-a-block full of kids running around, dogs running around. It's a really, really well-used park and very popular. It's next to the local school, and it's going to be an absolute blessing to have this as an addition. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. Councillor Smith, would you like to speak to this item?
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Parker says a lot of it already, but really happy that this is progressing and looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any speakers against this item? If there are no speakers against this item, councillors, cast your vote, please. And it is passed unanimously. We now go to CP 011123. Councillor Miles.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move a procedural motion to refer this back to administration, the Grand Escape Park lighting and investigation outcomes, to review the plan with the ward councillors and then to bring it back to a forum for the whole of council. Thank you.
Do you have a seconder? Councillor Moore, would you like to speak to the procedural motion? Oh, no, you can't. Sorry, it's a procedural motion. Sorry, Councillor Wright?
Yeah, just following on from previous procedural motions, Councillor Miles needs to state a date of when that needs to be brought back to a forum.
Councillor Miles?
Yes, and I'm usually quick on bringing those dates. I think it needs to come back to a forum in February of 2024. By then, Councillor Moore and myself would have already met with administration.
Thank you. Okay, so we will go straight to the vote for this because it's a procedural motion. Councillors, cast your vote. Councillor Moore, yeah, that's it. It's passed unanimously. So that procedural motion has been passed. We now go to CPO2 1123, disbandment of the Wanneroo BMX Club Working Group. Do you have anything to say, Ms Jennings?
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to let the council know that recommendation 3 in this particular item is being withdrawn as it's not necessary to complete the effect of the full motion. Thank you.
So with item 3 withdrawn, do we have a mover and seconder for this? Moved, Councillor Wright. Seconder, Councillor Miles. Councillor Wright, do you want to speak to this?
Thank you, Mayor. I think everyone knows my history and passion with this club ever since getting onto council. And I think there's been a lot of work that has been done up until this stage, particularly with getting grant funding and obviously working through those internal issues for a lot of their outdated facilities. So I thank administration for withdrawing that 3rd recommendation, as I know myself I did have a lot of concerns with that. However, I look forward to working with administration and the club over the next 2 years to be able to facilitate a good communication and outcome for the club in terms of remaining on that premises in the long term. So I just want to thank administration, but also thank the club for continuing to keep that communication open with council and also administration. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Miles, would you like to speak to this item?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just for council's benefit, when I was on council in 2007, this particular working group was then functional to look for a new site for the Wanneroo BMX club. And from 2007 to when I came back on council in 2017, they were still looking. And it was very clear that the site they had was still the best site for them to use. As it says in the report, they got a very large funding grant through the federal government from the 22 federal election, which I know that they're working on progressing those works. The other part of this style of working group, Mayor, is sometimes it can actually delay some of the communications with a club. And I understand councillors want to be involved as much as possible, but if you have a working group, everything has to then formally go through that working group, and the club has to go through it as well, and the administration does as well. There's no sort of shortcutting. So I would be very reserved in the future to be setting up working groups for specific projects. It has, to me, would have to be something large, like the Arc in Alkimos. Otherwise, I think we can just deal with most of the things that come in these working groups through our new forum process, or if we adapt some other ward level forum where we can obviously make things work in that place. But having said all that, I'm happy with the recommendations, and I thank administration for the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Do I have any speakers against this? If there are no speakers against this item, councillors, cast your vote. And that item was passed unanimously. We now go to Community Safety and Emergency Management Report, CPO 3/11/23, Review of the Cats Local Law 2023. Do I have a mover and seconder for the Cats Local Law? Councillor Berry. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Figg. Councillor Berry, would you like to speak to this?
Only very briefly. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think we've talked an awful lot about cats the last few weeks. We certainly talked a lot about Forum last week. I'm quite happy with what we heard at Forum, how the rangers are going to manage picking up cats, etc., etc. My message to all cat owners is please be a responsible cat owner. It really doesn't take a lot to put a collar, a tag, etc. on your cat, get it jabbed, to look after it. A cat is for life, not just for Christmas, with Christmas coming up. And if you have an Apple phone, you can put a tag on it and find it easily. That's all I've got to say. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Berry. Councillor Figg, would you like to speak to this item?
Yes, please. First of all, I'd like to thank Councillor Berry for her urging of people to make sure their cats are well cared for so that they don't escape out into our precious areas and destroy the fauna that we do have that is unique to the area. Very, very briefly, in my other line of work in the local member's office, this is one of the larger issues that we confront. Is cats getting out of properties and roaming the streets, particularly at night. And it is good to see that this is coming through, and I thank councillors and city staff for going through the whole process over the last couple of years to get this done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Figg. Do I have any speakers against this item? If there are no speakers against this item, councillors, cast your vote. And it was passed unanimously. We now go to item CPO 41123, Dog Exercise Provision Lot 124, Timely Hostess Mews, Mariginup. Do I have a mover? Councillor Miles. Do I have a seconder for this item? Councillor Huntley. Councillor Miles, would you like to speak to this item?
Yeah, look, thank you. Look, I'm happy with the report. The administration has made some small changes to the report to reflect the discussions that we had last week. Councillor Moore and myself did attend the site with Mr Chettleberg. I know he's acting in other roles, and also with our ranger, I don't know, Miss Kirsten, who came out as well with Mr Stewart's. It was a very, very good on-site meeting. In fact, they had some very good ideas that we were really appreciated. The local community there are going to be very happy on how we're progressing this. And whilst we all turned around and said we need to now speak to Miss Jennings because she's got a few dollars for us to be able to put in the trough and the water tank, I'm sure that'll come up in the mid-year review. But the item that we referred to mostly was obviously whether dogs were going to be on a lead or not, or banned. I'm very happy with the solution that we're looking at, where they will be banned. And there is an enclosed area where people could, if they wish to, put those dogs in without it being too much of a fuss. And then we'll monitor that and see how it goes in the future with the local residents. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Councillor Huntley.
Yes, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to make a comment. Can I make an amendment that at the moment the recommendation says the council specifies by absolute majority lot 124 Timely Hostess Mews Mariginup to be a place where dogs are prohibited at all times. But in the council's comment, or in administration's comment, it does say in future, if there is support for dogs to be able to be present at the site, administration could investigate options for how this could be achieved, noting the current designation of Timely Hostess Mews as a horse exercise area, and report back to council after 12 months. Could we make that part B of the recommendation, rather than leave it as a comment where it could get lost in the future?
Councillor Huntley, that is changing the intent completely of the recommendation, moving to have dogs in there where it says dogs are prohibited at all times. So I order that is an alternative, not an amendment, and we will go to vote on the substantive. So that is my ruling on it. Councillors, do we have any speakers against this item? Oh, do you want to speak for the item as it is?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Do you want to speak against the item as it is?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
The only trouble is I've seconded it.
Yeah, you've seconded it, so you can speak to the item, but you're actually speaking against it, but that's okay.
Okay. So, my reservation for actually, if you actually look at the photographs of the area, this is a massive, massive area. This is an area that has really, really good shrubbery and trees, and we'll have to have at some point really looking at the conservation of that area where the horses are, because there are some bits where you can push the horses through if they wanted to, but it would be rather silly to do that because you would break down some of the shrubs that have actually grown in there. And there are some good wildlife species in that area. It is ideal to fence that off and probably have a dog walking pathway in there, or even a running path for the future. If you look at the horse exercise area, there's plenty of room for the horses. Absolutely brilliant. Bridle paths go off, but it could be a combined park, and we are going to maybe shut that door in the future to this ever becoming a combined park. There's also, it's obviously a city-owned piece of land, and so there is a development potential later on, and that might be a reason why having a combined park would restrict what it would be able to do in the future. So I do think that we should open the door and have the fact that we could facilitate a dog park or other facilities in there in the future, but we're closing the doors with this resolution. So I can't support the recommendation as it stands at the moment.
Okay, do we have a speaker for? Yes, Deputy Mayor Rowe.
Just two questions, if I can, Mayor, just for particularly the purpose of new councillors, because that all did happen quickly. When the vote occurs, it'll be on the main substantive.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. And then the second, I don't foresee any issues, but I just would like, if possible, to check with governance. Is there any issue around a councillor seconding an item and then speaking against and not foreshadowing the councillor's vote, but indicating they will vote against? I imagine it's more just a perception issue rather than an actual legal issue, but could we just get that clarified?
It is a perception issue, but in induction we were advised that they could vote it, they could second it or move it and then vote against it. They are able to do that, okay? So do I have a speaker, as Councillor Huntley spoke against the item, do I have a speaker for the item? Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Mayor. There are numerous and varying venues throughout the city where dogs are permitted. On lead, off lead, fenced areas, open areas, on the beach, in the bush, and everywhere in between. Our equestrian community has up to now had 0 open, safe venues to call and make their own. Timely Hosted Mews is in an equestrian residential area. There are no other options for them. Mindarie, Girraween, Clarkson, there are no other options for the equestrian centre for an equestrian to go and have an area. To have a space of their own in their neighbourhood is, for these people in the centre, very important. I spoke to somebody this week and they were so excited. Up until now, they have genuinely had nowhere to go. There can be no argument that dogs and horses in an area like Timely Hostess Mews is dangerous. As a responsible councillor, having had this issue brought to my attention, I must take into account those dangers and ensure I take them into consideration when voting. I have also noted that there has been no opposition to the proposal. Giving the assurance to all of the residents in this area that we're not going to revisit this in the next year is very important for them. For these reasons, I'm supporting administration's recommendation and I thank you for your work going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. Do I have a speaker against this item?
A question, Madam Mayor.
Yes, I'll allow this question.
In Councillor Parker's rendition there, she actually stated that...
I'm sorry, that would be a point of clarification, not a question.
Let me change that and I'll put it to a better question.
Councillor Parker's statement at all, because this is supposed to be a question independent, not Councillor Parker.
In the past, did we not vote that Timely Hostess Mews was definitely a horse park?
Mr Clem.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, and I'm just referring to the background information in the report. Item 1 says that determines that in accordance with clause 3.5 of the City's Animal Local Law 2021, horses are permitted to be exercised on lot 124 Timely Hostess Mews, Origina.
Thank you. Councillor Huntley.
Another question, Madam Mayor. And the recommendation, this recommendation has nothing to do with the horse park. It is just specifically for dogs. Is that correct?
Mr Clem.
It relates to whether dogs could access Timely Hostess Mews, which has been designated as a horse exercise area.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any speakers against this item? If there are no speakers against this item, councillors, cast your vote, please. And that item has been passed 14-1 and Councillor Huntley voted against it. Okay, so we go to item CSO 11123, the 23 Q4 Corporate Performance Report. Do I have a mover and a seconder for this item? Moved, Councillor Herridge, seconded, Councillor Smith. Councillor Herridge, would you like to speak to this item?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Smith, would you like to speak to this item?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Do I have any speakers against this item? Councillors, cast your vote. You have a question, do you, Councillor Nguyen? Councillor Nguyen, please ask a question.
Just on page 317, the third items in the table, that's to do with the Lansdale Library, where it's indicated that it's red in terms of the overall risk rating. Is that indicating that there is a budget increase of over 20%? Or is it?
You're talking about the Dordak Library,
Yes.
aren't you? Item
Yes.
175 PMO16 on page 317 of the item.
Yes.
Sorry, what? Could you repeat the question through the Mayor? Could you please repeat that question again? I've just found the page.
So on page 317, that's the Lansdale Library, and then there's two red boxes ticked, current year budget and overall risk rating. It's both red. And looking at the indication on what red means, with a variance of 20% over, does that indicate that that means that the budget is currently assessed to be over budget by more than 20%?
Mr Nicholson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, that's a risk indicator. So at this stage, we're not talking actuals, but the project manager is highlighting to council that there's the potential that when we receive the tenders and open tenders for this project, it could be exceeding our budget. So it's not an actual cost overrun at the moment, but there's the risk that it could be.
Thank you, Mr Nicholson. And Ms Jennings, would you like to respond as well?
Thank you, Mayor. So that's the risk box, but also the one that's looking at current year budget. It's actually because it's 20% underspent at this point.
Thank you, Ms Jennings. Any other questions? Councillor Nguyen.
Could you indicate how you worked out the potential increase of over 20%? I think in the box next to it, it says higher construction costs for labour and material remain higher than 3 years ago. Would that be the reason for that?
Mr Nicholson.
Look, through you, Madam Mayor, it's the current market conditions over the last few years since we came out of COVID. Prices have just continued to rise, and our current experience, that is still the case. So the reasons put in the cell there are the remaining high costs for those items.
Just a follow on.
Thank you, Mr Nicholson. You have another question, do you, yes. Councillor Nguyen?
I understand this is going out for tender at the moment. Can you give us an update on that?
That is confidential at this point in time, and I'm sure Mr Nicholson will confirm that for us.
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, I cannot obviously give an update in terms of where we're at in the tender process, but we have had an update in terms of our quantity surveyor consultant receiving an update in terms of forecasted price for the project, and those pressures remain.
Sorry, I don't
Thank
mean
you, Mr Nicholson.
to disclose the price, but in terms of when would the tender be finished so that we sort of know what the process is?
Mr Nicholson?
I'd have to provide an update to that to councillors after meeting. I think it's within the next week or two.
Thank you, Mr Nicholson. Do I have any speakers against this item? If there are no speakers against this item, councillors, please cast your vote. Councillor Nguyen, we are missing your vote.
Sorry,
And that
Mayor,
was passed unanimously.
Is it supposed to have amendment/alternative on it, or is it supposed to have main substantive?
It's substantive.
Because our screen has amendment/alternative. I don't know why that's...
There hasn't been an amendment, it is the substantive. Okay, we're on to transactional finance, which is CSO 21123, warrant of payments for the period 30th September 23. Do I have a mover and seconder for the warrant of payments? Moved Councillor Berry, seconded Councillor Seff. Councillor Berry, would you like to speak to this item?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor. It's comprehensive as always.
Councillor Seff, would you like to speak to this item?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Do I have any speakers against this item? If there are no speakers against this item, councillors, please cast your vote. And that was passed unanimously. We now go to the financial activity statement for the period ended the 30th of September 2023, CS 03-1123. Do I have a mover and a seconder for this item? Moved Councillor Wright, seconded Deputy Mayor Rowe. Councillor Wright, would you like to speak to this item?
Thank you, Mayor. Very comprehensive report, and I do note the changes which require an absolute majority, which are much needed projects, so I look forward to seeing them upon completion. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Deputy Mayor Rowe, would you like to speak to this item?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Councillors, are there any speakers against this item? If there are no speakers against this item, councillors, please cast your vote. And that was passed unanimously. We now go to CSO 4-1123, which is the change of valuation of land method, 78 Gulfview Place, Nangara. Do I have a mover and seconder to this? Mover Councillor Miles, seconded Councillor Wright. Councillor Miles, would you like to speak?
I'm very happy with the report. I do thank administration for the updated information from my questions of last week, and hope if anybody else is listening out there that believes that they need to change their valuation method, to make contact with administration.
Councillor Wright, would you like to speak to this item?
No, thank you, Mayor, what he said.
Do I have any speakers against this item? If there are no speakers against this item, councillors, please cast your vote. It is happening. There we go. And it's passed unanimously. We now go to Customer and Information Services, CSO 5-1123, Personal Information Privacy Policy, Scheduled Review. Do I have a mover and seconder for this item? Moved Councillor Parker, seconded Councillor Smith. Councillor Parker, would you like to speak to this item?
Nothing to add. Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Smith, would you like to speak to this item?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Do I have any speakers against this item? No speakers against this item. Councillors, please cast your vote. And that is passed unanimously. We have a motion on notice from Councillor Berry. Oh, there's nothing from the Chief Executive Office. Item 9, motions on notice. MN 01-1123, consideration of council member attendance at events. We have a mover, Councillor Berry. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Huntley. Councillor Berry, would you like to speak to this item?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I make an amendment to the recommendation, please, and just add some wording at the end where it says prior to March 2024, it will come back to forum for all councillors to discuss?
So how do you want that to read? Prior to 2024 will come back to forum.
Provide further information to council members prior to March 2024 at a council forum for all councillors to discuss.
At a council forum for all councillors to discuss.
Okay.
That's fine. Okay, and you're happy with that addition, Councillor Huntley?
Yes, Madam Mayor, yeah.
Councillor Berry, would you like to speak to this item?
No, I think admin have done quite a good job of putting that together for me. Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I think it's sort of self-explanatory.
Councillor Huntley, would you like to speak to this item?
Just to say that I think we have a policy for everything, but we don't have a policy for this, and it will also improve our ability to be able to look at our diaries in the future and make decisions between ourselves about making sure that we do attend all events, and the events, if we can cover them, are covered even by another councillor. So it would be a wonderful thing to be able to produce a document that actually helped us to solve the problem of events that aren't covered by a councillor but requested.
Do I have any speakers against this item? A question from Deputy Mayor Rowe.
Thank you, Mayor. I believe the way in which the recommendation's been written is that a draft policy would come before councillors. Is administration able to advise, perhaps it may need to go to the mover, whether that report to forum could also talk about the level of overlap between such a draft policy and the existing policy that is mentioned in admin's comments, which I believe is the councillor attendance at events policy, because administration's making reference to that numerous times throughout. Hence, could a report to council comment on where there is overlap and potentially duplication, because we are interested in efficiency.
Councillor Berry? Ms Jennings.
Thank you, Mayor. And yes, as you see at the end of the comments that we've made, that the Act actually requires us to have a policy relating to attendance at events. Hence, we have the attendance at events policy, council members and CEO, City of Wanneroo. This policy is actually due for review. So we would certainly propose that as part of what comes forward to council members, we'll include that policy and how that works and how this might fit into that policy rather than having two policies. But that'll be one of the things that we bring to discuss at a forum.
Thank you, Ms Jennings. Any other questions? Yes, Councillor Parker.
Just a question. So I'm not supporting another event inclusion for councillors policy. I'm supporting bringing the discussion to forum, but not the event inclusion for councillors policy. Am I right, or am I just reading that wrong? That council requests administration consider the details.
Ms Smart.
Titled event inclusion.
Smart.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and through you. The recommendation here is requesting administration consider the details in the motion on notice and then bring those details to a council forum for further information to be considered for all council members. It's not establishing a policy, it's identifying that there is a suggested policy in this motion on notice and those details to be further considered.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Smart. Any other questions on this item? Are there any speakers against? Councillor Nguyen.
Just on page 462, where second paragraph, where administration says that it's not respectful of the organisers, where we extend invitations to other council members. Has there been, resistance from organisers where we have unintendedly invited other councillors to an event that were not supposed to be there?
Ms Jennings.
Through you, Mayor, we don't actually do that. We are respectful of the invitations that come in, and so if an invitation is coming just for one or two people, that's what that organiser wants. It's different if they send to us and say, please invite the councillors and Mayor. We just take note of those external invitations. Might be different for our own events, but that's the way our procedure works at the moment.
Councillor Nguyen.
Yes, and I guess on the contrary, where an invite may have been written to a councillor instead of the mayor's office, would the council take the position that, or the admin take the position that that councillor would be going to that event instead of the mayor? Is that the understanding? Or is that still the mayor's office to decide who will be attending on behalf of the council?
That's what we'll be discussing.
Through the Mayor, if we don't know about the invitation, then of course it hasn't gone to the Mayor's office, so it's not able to go through that procedure. So it's a scenario that I'm not able to clearly answer because I wouldn't know necessarily unless the councillor actually informed the Mayor about the situation.
Do I have any speakers against this item or any further questions? If I have no speakers against this item, councillors, cast your vote. And that is passed unanimously. We now go to item 10, urgent business. There is nil. Item 11, confidential. There is nil. Item 12, date of the next meeting. The next council members briefing session has been scheduled for 6 p.m. on Tuesday the 5th of December to be held at Council Chambers, Civic Centre, 23 Dundebar Road. Item 13, closure, and I now declare this council meeting closed at 8:37 p.m. Thank you.